All right, let's talk about this midterm here. So the midterm, there's the information there. Oh, I don't know what happened on my slide. It was all neat when I had it up before. So the midterm is next Friday. And so that's 1 week from today. And it is 10:30 to 11:30 a.m. So it's 1 hour is the midterm. And this is worth 20% of your final grade. And I've decided that this midterm, we don't have any direction from the college in terms of midterms and stuff yet, in terms of if we're going back to in person and all that. I imagine that's probably going to be after the break. But I have decided that the midterm will be open book. So much of the midterm will be very similar to the quizzes, except for you're not getting 2 attempts at the midterm, unfortunately. Much of the midterm will be very similar in that it's going to be multiple choice or true, false. Generally, what I do on my tests is the multiple choice are worth 1 mark and true and false are worth half a mark each. So my plan is to have about 50 marks of questions for that are going to be true, false, or multiple choice. And I'm also going to have some short answer questions, and I'll talk about those in a second. And it'll be a total of 60 marks. So basically, you have 60 minutes to do 60 marks. Now, the multiple choice true, false, they should be, should not take you a minute for each of those. And that should be plenty of time. So it is open book, but you should be studying for this. We have covered quite a bit of information. You're not going to have time to look up 60 questions. And so it's important that you do study. And I want to talk a little bit about that here in a moment. So you may have noticed I said about 50 marks. So this is my plan, 50 marks and 10 marks. But I haven't written the test yet. And I've never written a midterm for this course yet. So I'm going to put it together, and there might be a little bit of wiggle room there. Maybe in the end I decide it's 8 marks for short answer and 52 for multiple choice, or maybe the other way around. Maybe I have 12 marks and 48 or something like that. But it's not going to be much different from that. You're probably wondering what kind of questions I'm going to have for the short answer, and I haven't fully decided about that yet. I'm still thinking about it a little bit. Maybe I'll comment a bit more on it next week when I've had a chance to start writing the exam. But I'm pretty sure you will have some questions in there that will be asking you. So one of my ideas, for example, was having some nutrition labels and then asking you some questions about those nutrition labels. So maybe the question is, what's going on with these products in terms of saturated fats, right? And you could imagine I could have different products and different serving sizes, and there's lots of questions I could ask you around nutrition labels. So anyway, more on that maybe next week if I have an idea what I'm going to think about, but there will be some short answer questions on there. What else can we say about the midterm? So we're going to cover 6 topics. Topic 6 we haven't talked about yet. It's going to be mostly on Wednesday. I'm not even sure yet how much of topic 6 I'm going to cover, but I will make sure that what is on the test only reflects what we cover up to the first part of next Wednesday's lecture. So that's the plan anyway. Topic 6 is relatively short. I think it's even shorter than topic 5. So there's a chance I will have it completed easily in one lecture. I know it's hard to tell sometimes. I do tend to want to talk a lot. And I do like talking about proteins. Proteins are very, very interesting, at least from a biochemistry standpoint. But these are the topics that are going to be covered. And like I said, take a look at your notes. We've covered quite a bit of material. So some quick study tips here. Take a look at the lecture notes. Okay, I do want people to look at the textbook, but you may have noticed that I have been following the textbook relatively closely. But there's some areas in the textbook that I've skipped over. I'm not going to cover everything. And there's a few things in the lecture notes that are not necessarily in the textbook. So the emphasis is what I have in the lecture notes, the PowerPoints and whatnot. And it's always good to take a look and see, are there some pieces missing? Something there, there are some things that I've talked about, but maybe they're not necessarily in the lecture notes. So you may want to review the lectures or fill in those missing pieces using the textbook or internet or like I said, the lecture recordings and whatnot. I always recommend that you make your own notes. So if you are just reading things, or if you are just reviewing the lecture recording, how much are you actually going to remember just from reading? Probably not that much. You know, depending on who you are, it could be anywhere from 10% to maybe 35%. But when you start to make your own notes, you're actually forming and organizing things in your brain, and you're forming memories, and you're going to retain a lot more. Even if you never look at those notes ever again, you will generally retain more. Now, there's hundreds of ways to do notes, and you can ask me about it sometime in an office hour if you want. But there's lots of ways to do it. Some people do recipe cards. Some people do mind maps. Some people do flow charts and definitions, and tons of ways to do notes. But I really strongly encourage you to make notes when you do your studying. The other thing is that the final exam will not be open book, by the way. And we'll cover these topics as well. So it's important that you do know a little bit about them and retain that long-term memory of them. So take a look at the learning objectives for each unit. I'm gonna flip through those quickly now in a minute, and kind of highlight a few things. But those learning objectives, when I make the exam, I'm using them as a bit of a checklist, right? It's only a 60-minute exam. I'm not going to make it longer. It's only worth 20% of your grade. But I'm using it as a bit of a checklist. I'm not going to necessarily cover everything on the exam, but that's what I'm looking at in terms of making sure I don't have like 5 questions on one objective and none on another, for example. So do make sure you take a look at those as you study. You can make use of my office hours, make an appointment, whatnot, and talk to me about things if you have any concerns anytime, obviously. You can get help. There's tutors at the Academic Success Center. You can contact a learning strategist through Accessibility Services. The learning strategists are people that their job is to help people learn. So they do deal with people that have accommodations and disabilities, for example, but they're not just there for people with accommodations and disabilities. Anybody can talk to them. And if you talk to any of your friends who've had a meeting with a learning strategist, it's actually pretty good. They can teach you ways in terms of how to study or approach multiple choice questions and things like that. And if you have a hard time, particularly with exams and tests, I encourage you to reach out to them. There's a question here. Somebody's saying, what would I like the people with extended time accommodations to do? What I can do is I can extend I have extended the programming time through Moodle. So I would say you don't need to do it through the testing center at all. Unless you really want to do it through the testing center, I don't think there's any need to do so. Just let me know if that's the case. I know some people have already made some bookings. They may want to cancel them now, knowing the situation around the exam. The other thing to do is review those quizzes. I will probably be reusing some of the questions from the quizzes. They're going to pop up again in the midterm and pop up again maybe on the final. So it's worth it to review those quizzes. Once the quiz is closed, they are open and you can see all the correct answers. So it's definitely worth it to take a look at those as well. So some quick tips on answer multiple choice questions. I found this from this link here from Maclean's. And there's a lot of tips out there on multiple choice question answering. I thought this was a really good article though, so I encourage you to check it out. Generally though, some of these things are pretty obvious, maybe some less. So read the question and then try to answer it in your mind before you look at the right responses. Some questions are going to be like, I know the answer to that, whereas others, just think about it for a second. Think about what you think the right answer might be, and then look at the options. Then you should be able to eliminate the wrong answers. Maybe not all, but sometimes it's pretty easy to eliminate 1, 2, and if you're lucky, 3 or 4 of the wrong answers, and then select the best answer. Now, if you don't know the information, right, that's going to be a problem. This is why you have to study so that you are going to be able to answer these questions. There's debate about whether you go with your gut and go back and change it later. That's one of those things. And I always recommend people do the ones you know, and you can skip those other ones later. Get a lot of the test done. Don't want you getting stuck on one question and wasting 15 minutes of your time just because you don't know the answer to that. Always answer the ones you know, go back to the other ones later. and deal with them then, and then answer every question. All right, what I want to do, I guess this is the last thing I do. I'm just going to quickly flip through the learning objectives for each of the units and maybe highlight a few things. It says here, this is the first one, food choices and human health. I don't know what happened. My PowerPoint's got all messed up. It's going off the screen and everything. Weird. Anyway, so this one here was an introduction, right? And we haven't talked about all the nutrients yet, but so we don't need to worry about all the nutrients, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, definitely. But this is a good one. Characteristics of a healthy diet. That's something we're definitely going to come back and talk about a little bit later on this semester. But some of those things we've talked about kind of continually ongoing. So many of the things in this topic I see as ongoing things over the semester, right? Topic 2 had a whole bunch of definitions on it. So I have some of them in bold here, and I'm hoping you guys are very familiar with food labels. So make sure you go through that and know what a lot of these definitions are, because I'll definitely have some questions around these definitions. So AI or RDA, and what is UL? You're going to want to know what those things are. Number 3 was about the body, and again, more definitions and kind of talking about various things, such as what the immune system is for. And we talked a little bit about digestion, and digestion we've been talking about even more now, with digestion of carbohydrates, digestion of lipids, and so on. So some of those things are important. Again, if you don't know what the liver does or the gallbladder, review those things, because they're definitely important to some of these digestion concepts for sure. Number 4, carbohydrates. So this was probably our longest topic. I think this was 3 full lectures on carbohydrates. So there's a lot there, and it's not a bad thing. Carbohydrates are super important. You can see if you look at the top of the topic, right? There's a few major concepts, right? Sugar is a huge part of this. By sugars, we mean simple sugars that can contribute to diabetes, added calories, those kind of things. We talked about the importance of carbohydrates as being an essential part of your diet, fueling your brain, those kind of things. And then, a lot about fiber we've been talking about, right? What's the deal with fiber? Why is it good for us? Those kind of things. Number 5, we have lipids, fats, oils, and steroids. And so the huge focus was on the triglycerides and the fatty acids. But do know a little bit about some of those other things, the cholesterols, particularly what's going on with the HDL and the LDL cholesterol, right? Those are really important things to know for what's being measured and why, for example, for heart health. And then topic 6, we're going to cover next Wednesday. I was hoping to have it covered by now, but we'll have to look at it Wednesday, and at least you have a couple of days to digest it. There's a pun for you. We're mostly going to be talking about the functions of proteins and what are amino acids, and a little bit about digestion, a little bit about health in terms of having too much or too little protein. And some of the protein stuff I'm going to push off till after the midterm, but we'll have to just see what I cover on Wednesday. Okay, looks like we are just wrapping up now in terms of time. I guess I'll have to close there. And are there any more questions about the midterm? Okay, I'm sure there will be lots of questions as people start to study. So do reach out to me, and I'll do my best to answer them.